What's up, gifted family? Welcome to another episode of the show that is the GP YouTube. Just a reminder that if you support what we do here, make sure to go over to giftedperformance.com and sign up for our automated coaching service. For only $1 a day, you'll get access to 15 highly customized training programs, a macronutrient calculator, our meal planning feature that lets you build and save meals based on your macros, as well as access to our private Facebook group. All subscriptions help us in continuing to put out great content to get you to your fitness goals. Thanks for stopping by, and without any further delay, let's get into today's video. Enjoy.
Welcome back, guys. Another episode of the GPP, the Gifted Performance Podcast, where we give you the information and practical takeaways to improve your own general physical preparedness. Tom loves that intro. He smiles every time. Tom, it's good to see you. How are you?
I'm good.
Michael, do you want to blur your background again?
Do I? I don't think so.
You want just the gifted in there.
Circle the wagon Sunday.
And of course, we are joined today by, if you live anywhere other than under a rock, you know Mr. Ashton Rouska himself. Ashton, thanks for coming on today. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Seeing the last squat video you posted, when was that from? What was that training session?
The one from yesterday?
The one, was it yesterday?
That was yesterday.
The big set of 5?
Mm-hmm.
How'd it feel? Powerful? You feeling dangerous?
Good question. It felt hard.
Hard? I can imagine. Yeah.
There's a certain point where everything just feels bad. Yeah. It'd be 70%, but if it's over like 500 pounds, it just feels bad.
It was hard.
So for those who aren't clued in, maybe they're not into the USAPL powerlifting circuit. Well, they should be. But if they are not, Ashton, give the people a little bit of an introduction on yourself, personal competitive history. Did you play sports when you were younger? All that kind of, what do you do in your free time? That kind of stuff.
Great. So I started powerlifting in USAPL back in 2013, April. Wow. I did a state meet. I lived in Alaska during the time. I also was a wrestler and a football player, and I also did martial arts in high school and late middle school. But as I progressed through high school, and I moved to Texas my junior year of high school, at that time frame, I needed to work a lot more. So there was a bit less sports, and I really only had time for powerlifting outside of academics and work. So I stuck with it since, and fell in love with it since my first, competition back in 2013. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I've set, various records. People that know me know that I like to compete. I compete pretty often. If I can, I like to compete as much as I can in a year. 4, 5, 6 times is good for me. Anything less than that, for me is not enough. But yeah, I mean, and outside of lifting, what I really sort of enjoy doing these days is not a lot, because, when you're in like grad school and everything else, there's just like not very much time for yourself. But I mean, when I do get those, lapses, something I really enjoyed doing before the whole COVID thing emerged was I would probably go to the movies like once every weekend. It's just something I've always enjoyed doing. Big fan of horror, big fan of comedy movies and action. So any of those genres, and I'm always down for it. But yeah, outside of that, my life has revolved around working mostly in the past few years.
I personally have 3 questions. I don't know if you guys want to jump in or want to let me rapid fire these off real quick. Tom, anything? Mike, anything?
Go for it.
Oh, I'm ready. Here we go. All right. Living in, you said Alaska, right? I didn't hear that wrong. Did I?
Oh, you heard that right. I lived in Alaska.
Perfect. What is your favorite Alaskan cuisine?
That, you know, I guess, I mean, like anything, I guess the seafood up there is really good. Like the salmon, like that was really huge in Alaska. And I really like seafood a lot. So yeah, that'd probably be my favorite thing I've had up there.
You heard it here first.
What's your
PES, performance enhancing salmon?
what's your opinion, Ashton, on the wild Alaskan pollock?
Don't have one.
Are you a fan of the McDonald's filet of fish sandwich?
Not really.
Okay, reeling it back. Topic at hand. Second question. The first time you ever touched a barbell, squat, bench, deadlift, do you remember your first lifts?
So the first time I ever tried to squat, I was like 13 or 14 years old. Well, no, I was 14 when I first tried to squat. And I just put on 225 and I tried to do it and I got stapled. My first bench press, I did 55 pounds for 3 reps. And my first deadlift, I only deadlifted on a trap bar until like my sophomore year of high school. I did like three something, like 350 or 365, one of those two, depending on the weight of the bar. But yeah.
That 55-pound bench triple, did you post that on the gram?
If I had one, I might have.
Was that like a hashtag poverty bench? What's the weeb crew? What are they posting on their bad benches now?
bench doesn't count. No one cares about bench.
Yeah, which is so funny. It's so funny because you even look on social media, like and I'm not, a dude who really fishes like for likes or anything. It doesn't matter to me that much, but I just find it really funny, like the difference between the bench videos you post and the squat or deadlift videos you post and the reactions to them. I'm like, hey, here's me hitting 320 for 10 on close grip, which I think is, impressive and like cool. And then, people are like, oh, that 570 squat looks nice.
I feel like the internet's like the upside down, right? Like if you walk into any gym in America, right, and you tell somebody, what you bench, that's what they want to know, right? Like,
yeah,
in general population, they don't care what you squat or deadlift. Like they don't really conceptualize those things, but they care about your bench press. So you go on like powerlifting Instagram, nobody cares about your bench press. They're like, yeah, that's like lunch at the powerlifting meet,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that's for good reason. I mean, 99% of the time, you're not going to win your meets off your bench press.
But I think that it's also like a really big bench takes years and years to build up just because of the amount of mass that goes behind. Like you don't see skinny people putting up 500-pound bench presses, and I think there's a little bit quicker hit of gratification from building up a squatter, especially a deadlift. Like you see these guys deadlifting 700 pounds and you're like, how? Like you can load that weight, but you can get it off the floor somehow.
Yeah. I was actually reading this morning. I think there's over 1,000 drug tested 700 deadlifts now.
Yeah. It's wild.
So, Ashton, when you were growing up, when you were getting started in lifting, did you have any powerlifters, when you kind of transitioned over more towards powerlifting, did you have any powerlifters that you really looked up to or that you wanted to emulate?
So before I ever started lifting, I actually like on YouTube, such a big thing. I mean, I guess it's still a big thing now, but like I would, watch like videos of just various people just like lifting, heavy weights. Like one of the guys I actually came across on YouTube a lot who later coached me was Gene Bell. And then I saw like Ed Cohen videos, and then I saw a lot of the older lifters too from like the 90s and like the early mid 2000s, like 2000, before 2010. But particularly I was really impressed with Gene. And then his son Ian as well, a little bit later when I saw some of his stuff emerge too. This was before I had even met them. Also Johnny Candido. I watched his videos a lot when I was like a lot younger, and you know, had the pleasure to meet Johnny and get to know him and become a friend with him. It's kind of funny how, you know, your idols, you know, over time, the people that you know idolize from the start, you know, there comes a point where, you know, if you stick around long enough and you get to a higher level, that they just become, you know, acquaintances.
I know that's something that Ryan and Mike can empathize with, you know, when I joined the team, you know.
Always looked up to Tom. I was like, man, how can this guy safety bar squat 300 pounds? Please teach me your ways, sir.
But no, I mean, but when the big thing for me was what got me into lifting. So it was because I was starting to play football then. And, you know, the coaches, that's where I first started lifting weights. And then I lived in Korea at that time. And then there was a guy, never forget him. I'm convinced his first name is Coach Park. And yeah, I mean, he was like a jacked half Korean, half Japanese, I believe. I don't want to mess that up, but I hope that's at least that's what he said to me years ago. But at any rate, I digress. He was, you know, extremely and incredibly impressive lifter, like really strong, and you know, he taught me a lot from the very beginning about lifting. Him and some of the football coaches I had then. And then when it came to powerlifting, really, after that first meet, a couple months later, I moved to San Antonio, Texas, where I would eventually meet Mike. And that's where, yeah, and that's where I met Gene. I was introduced to Gene through one of the USAPL members in Alaska. And to me, that was nuts because like I already kind of knew who he was, and I like saw his videos and stuff. And really, I was really excited to get to Texas and to work with him. And yeah, that was a fun time. I mean, he was, you know, when it came to lifting, he was just as great in person. I mean, I got there, I was, you know, 16, and like he was stronger than me. He was like in his 50s. And I was like, Jesus Christ, this guy's crazy. But yeah, no, he was probably one of my biggest early role models once I got into powerlifting.
Okay, Alaska, Korea. Anywhere else that we need to know of? Any other extreme locations that you've lived in before? Or was it just straight to Texas from there?
Fun level.
That's quite the trajectory. Where'd you live at?
I've lived in North Carolina, Tennessee, and Germany as well.
He's been everywhere, man. He's been everywhere, man.
Military brats.
Yeah, very true, very true. So, shall we talk the recent meet?
Sure.
Let's do it. I just want to start. I want to get it out of the way right away. 8 for 9. You left some on the table. We all know it. How do you sleep at night? How do you even go to bed at night?
Oh, I don't sleep. That's
the man's secret.
Fair.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, it's a crazy, insane numbers that we've are not seeing anyone else hit right now. I mean, across the board, 2095 total, 793, 457, 844. Those are freedom units, folks. Freedom units, because last time I checked, this is America. At 217, at 217 pounds. Are you kidding me? So how are you feeling going into that meet? Were you really primed, feeling dangerous, like you had something serious cooked up?
I actually felt pretty average going into the meet.
Yeah.
Oh god.
It just broke poor Mike's heart.
All right. No, how do you feel average though? Like was training good?
It was pretty good up until the last like 3 weeks or so, 2 or 3 weeks. That I didn't feel so great for a little while. But that was probably because I was, so I had like a really, really big session, maybe about 4 weeks out, where like I did like 870 on deadlift and like squatted 799 and then benched 469 or 463, one of those. And after that session, because that I was like building up to that, so each week I was lifting really heavy, and I built up to that, and then after that, yeah. I was pretty beat from that. So the other sessions then was just sort of to, um, manage, I guess, sort of the accumulated fatigue from all of that training prior, and to just sort of feel better, feel fresher before the meet. And then by the time the meet rolled around, like felt, like on the day of the meet, like I felt like pretty normal. Like I didn't feel like there's some days where just it's on, like you're on. Like it wasn't one of those days. It was just like a normal day. Like if I go in on a Saturday and I'm like supposed to lift heavy and I go through the motions and lift heavy, that's pretty much what it was like for me, at least. Yeah, it's the best way I can describe it.
Wow.
When you hit a big session like that at 4 or 5 weeks out, is there some pressure that you feel moving forward? Like, all right, these are some big numbers that I hit. Like, what do I do moving forward to improve upon those numbers? So on meet day, I hit something even bigger. Or is that something that you kind of just, whatever, we're just moving along with it?
Yeah, I'm a little bit more of the second thing, because for me, I realized that, I mean, we all know this. Like progress obviously isn't, fully and totally, linear all the time, and there are like some fluctuations, and those weeks after the meet or after that big session I did, I knew we're going to be really busy here outside of lifting anyway. And so just being able to manage that was really a priority, but essentially just maintaining, good health going into the meet was the main goal, because I was still, lifting moderately heavy weights, and it's not like I was going to just lose my strength or all of it was just going to disappear. So I don't really overreact or freak out about that kind of stuff like I used to maybe years ago.
Yeah, I got a question on that, Ashton.
Yeah.
Like on the topic of like kind of trusting your training and like your peak and stuff like that. That was something that I never used to do very well. But for me, training around guys like Gene and Ian, especially, like I would see them. I mean, honestly, like having not good training sessions, like 2 weeks out, you would think at that point you'd be like, oh my God, like this is like not going to go well. But like it really always impressed me how they would be just like super calm and just like, yeah, it's not meet day yet, so it's fine. Do you feel like that was something that kind of rubbed off on you? Because that was like one of the biggest takeaways for me from training around those guys.
Yeah, I think after working with Gene for so long, if it was like, a week, 2 weeks out from a meet and I felt absolutely crushed, like I was no longer ever worried about it.
Yeah, that confidence is so huge.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you go into it with the expectation that you're not going to perform well because you feel like like trash, then you might perform like trash. I mean,
It's true. I agree.
So when you talk about, having little, and Mike made a post about this, about, kind of training through pain, training through fatigue, training through small injuries. Are those things that are small injuries something that you've had to deal with across your career? Or are you one of those people that's pretty blessed in terms of staying healthy across the board for the most part?
What I will say is, for me, it's kind of a strange pattern. I used to get hurt a lot when I was getting into it. Maybe like, so if you looked at the time I started powerlifting to now, so 2013 to now, and once April hits of next year, that'll be 8 years. So if you take the first 4 years of it, I used to get hurt a lot, like pretty badly sometimes. And then the next 2 years after that, I started getting hurt less. Like it still happened every now and then, but just much less. And now, like the past year and a half or so, plus, like I very rarely like actually like I think deal with small injuries or get hurt anymore. It's because I think the mentality over like the years and the focus for me sort of changed. For me, my mindset now is the healthiest that I can possibly be is always going to be the strongest I can possibly be. And so above even, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm still, definitely pushing numbers because, this is a sport on numbers, and numbers win it. But at the same point in time, I've shifted the focus and priority so much more than before to like my health now and just having good health and being functional and being healthy, that I think that, part of, these performances that I've been putting up lately can be strongly attributed to just being healthier. Because I mean, for years, like I was really strong, but I would get hurt. I would get set back. I'd have to train through it again. I'd get hurt again, train through it again. To put it in perspective, I did my first 700-pound deadlift when I was 17 years old. I got hurt pretty bad shortly after, and I didn't do 700 pounds again until the same exact meet 1 year later. So in my mind, I'm like, this is an entire year of progress that I'm actually behind on in reality. And so, putting that in perspective, or that really put things into perspective for me, I should say. And, my priorities sort of shifted and I became much more health focused. So lately, I've been pretty healthy for the most part. And it's very rare that I have injuries. I mean, there was the pec strains I had this year, much earlier this year, which was interesting because in 10 years of lifting, I've never had pec strains or pec issues. But it was just sort of, I think, a lot of unfortunate sort of circumstances just sort of aligning at the right moment, which will probably happen once in 10 years. So, but other than that, I've been pretty healthy. My pec and shoulder is a lot healthier now. So, yeah.
And when we look at kind of injury prevention or staying healthy in training, a lot of that just comes back to kind of how you structure your training. How are you actually structuring your training? So what is your training structure as a whole kind of look like? Is there a system that you and your coach prefer? Something that you found that works best for you over time? Are you more of like a pre-planned, here's the plan, there's the numbers that we're hitting today, stick with that? Or more on the side of auto-regulation? I'm interested to hear kind of how you structure things.
Okay. Yeah, so I definitely think there's a place for both in programming for those, sort of pre-structured numbers as well as the auto-regulation. Auto-regulation, at least when you're first starting out with, very much like super beginner lifters, I don't think is, I think it still has its place, but you might use it less with them. And as people get more experienced and they become more sort of fine-tuned with their bodies and they begin to understand, they begin to get a better understanding of, their abilities, then I think that it's more appropriate than to usually incorporate more and more of like stuff like auto-regulation. But I will say that in the last few years, I would often do a lot of SPD sessions, like once or twice a week. And I would usually do this in what I found before I started working with Marcellus, my current coach, because before him, I was actually training myself like pretty much the last like 4.5+ years. So, what I found was if I want to push hard, push like rather aggressively, but still have fun and for it to be safe. Usually I kind of call it like the rule of 4. For me, it was like 4 weeks. And then after 4 weeks, like, body would start to sort of just like, you would just like literally feel like you're deteriorating. And then you would have to sort of like back off for a bit, reset, and then restart. And then for me, that's sort of what I've enjoyed doing is taking like 4-week periods and pushing, relatively hard, but within reason. And then taking a little bit of time to heal like that first week of the next 4-week period, but still just enough weight, to maintain fitness, and then do the same thing over again. And then I've been doing that over and over again for the last couple of years. And it's worked out pretty well. Sometimes I think more volume is appropriate than others. Like if you're trying to gain weight, like if I'm, lately I've been gaining weight, so I've been doing more volume than I usually would do. But for a while, when I was, planning on just staying in the 93s, I didn't do as much volume. I just did more heavy singles, like triples to singles, honestly, just because, I mean, I'm not saying that volume was like, wasn't useful for me during that time, but I already had like the muscle mass, for that weight class. And when I was competing 93 anyway, I'm not really bragging. I'm not the cocky person, but I was by far the leanest one, the most muscular one. So building muscle mass wasn't really a huge concern for me. It was just getting stronger at that point, at the weight that I was at. And I was already maxing the weight class at that point. But yeah, I mean, in a roundabout way, just to kind of go back to your original question, it's mostly the 4-week periods that I like to push pretty hard. But 3 weeks of it's really pushing hard. 1 week of it is sort of recovering from the last 4 weeks, mainly. That's kind of what it looks like.
Tom, I want to open the floor. You seem like your interest has been piqued.
Yeah. So you mentioned, training to gain muscle mass, and I'm interested to kind of get some context here because you said you pulled 700 for the first time when you were 17. And obviously, you probably didn't start off like super muscular, but do you think that maybe your body responds to training uh, in a way that's maybe more biased towards, accumulation of lean tissue? Like some people, they don't really become more muscular from training unless they're really chasing that with their design. And other people, you can feed them heavy singles and they're jacked as hell, just like from breathing. And so, given those two extremes of like the guy who can't, catch a pound if you threw it at him, and a guy who, just grows muscle from air, you think you maybe kind of trend a little bit more towards the gifted side of that spectrum, that continuum?
100%.
Yeah, he's naturally just a more muscular guy, which is cool, and I think that gives you a lot of opportunity just beyond, you have less general fitness that you have to cultivate before you can dig into the competitive portion, like for instance, to use myself as an example, because I'm a really good example of what you don't want to be for powerlifting. I'm not a big framed guy. I'm a little over 5'8". My wife's wrists are the same size as mine. Like I've just got small bones. We joke that I have bird bones. So and I'm naturally just a light build, and for me, the most success I've had with training when I was powerlifting and training for powerlifting usually involved a long buildup of a lot of volume and really trying to build a good structural base before I took on heavier stuff. And obviously, when you're talking about like I'm gonna build up before I take on a heavy training phase, you may talk about 12 weeks of prep for a 6-week heavy training phase. So you're 18 weeks with 6 weeks of what I would consider productive powerlifting training versus, you who maybe are able to accomplish something similar just off of specific training alone. Yeah, it gives you a huge advantage that lets you really dig into the specific movements a lot harder, feel weight on your back more often, in your hands more often. And so I think that's an interesting kind of dichotomy. And it's not to say anybody's, better or worse. It's just that it's pretty remarkable the amount of variation, within humans with that regard.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny that you're mentioning all this. Like for years, I didn't believe that the style of training that I've done in the past year and a half or so was like not very sustainable. I was, I kind of grew up believing, there has to be, a lot of volume. There has to be a lot of building, these heavy weights can wait for, when you're getting much closer to competition. But, one day I just woke up and I was like, maybe that's bullshit. And then I just tested it out, right? And it worked, it worked perfectly fine. And again, I kind of, harkened to this earlier, but the last year and a half, 2 years has been the most healthiest I've been in this sport.
Yeah. Well,
So
I think that kind of harkens back to like the enormity of individual differences here, and I know there's a lot of people out in the world of fitness that think that like you can just put everybody on the same program and that there's one best program, period. And really it's not, because, if I took my 15 years of lifting experience and took me starting out in like 2005, 2006, how I would train me versus how, you at 10 years in would train, your own avatar at 10 years prior, with the knowledge of where you are, it'd be totally different. Right. So I think that's pretty cool that, that there could be such an enormous variation.
yeah.
And like you said, you're with more frequency and heavier weights and kind of what you've described in terms of training, that's that you feel healthy and good training that way. And I know that personally, I went through a phase where I trained like that and I broke my back.
Yeah,
Like literally
That's what I was-
fractured my spine.
that's also what I was going to get to. It's definitely not sustainable for everybody.
Yeah.
I figured for myself, just theoretically that it would be because, I had like the muscle mass already developed, and I'm assuming that I have the bone density as well. I've never broken a bone in my life from all the sports I played. And I've broken other bones, but not my bones, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Not to incriminate myself, but on Saturday nights I like to.
It's not a threat. It's just a statement.
Yeah. No, but yeah, I mean, but for me specifically, like this style worked really well. And to put it in perspective, so in 2017, at Raw Nationals in the 205 weight class, I was 20 years old. I totaled 1851 for the win. That was 2017. That was my biggest total in a meet all the way up until 2018 December. And I had competed several times after that, but I didn't beat that total. And that total, that next biggest total is when I started training like the way that I'm describing. I hit 1901 at that meet. So from 2017 to 2018 December, it was a 50-pound increase in the total. The next year in July, I did 1984 in 2019, so about 8 months later. And that was an 83-pound jump in the total in less than a year. And then the next year, I hit 2095 this year. And that is over a 110-pound increase. So each year, the increases in total, right, have gone up.
That makes me nervous a lot. Usually people don't have progression at that rate. Guys who hit 1,800-pound totals are like, okay, we're going to grind for 2 years for 30 pounds. And you're like, every year just knocking out another 100. That's wild.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I mean, once I started, like I said, once I started prioritizing and focusing on health, and then I changed and adapted the training to make it more efficient for me personally, the progress, it just took off. To put it in, to make it even more interesting, the total that I won in 2017 with the 1851 total. So yesterday I did sets of 5 for on deadlift with 1852. So, so it's like worlds apart now, basically. And I'm only, 15, 20 pounds heavier than 20 pounds heavier than I was then, which is a lot, but yeah.
So I'm curious. I know you mentioned a couple times prioritizing health, and I know kind of globally, I have an idea. We all have an idea of what that means, but that's coming from our own position of biases and how we treat ourselves. For you specifically, with what your training looks like, what does that mean?
So a big part of it for me is might be partly psychological too, but like fatigue management. Like if I'm hitting, huge total after huge total each weekend, and I'm doing it for more than, 2 or 3 weeks, like I almost like sort of intuitively know, like, I'm getting more fatigued and more beat up. And if I keep pushing at this rate in another couple of weeks, like I'll be due for either an injury or a really, really bad session, or a bad session that could end in an injury. And so it's almost like I don't have necessarily exact markers, I would say, but it's mostly come from just like trial and error, like experimenting with like the amount of time I can go pushing relatively hard. And then when things would just feel totally beat up and I feel like I'm literally about to get hurt. So that's what I used to do when I first started doing it. Like I would train really hard until I felt like I was going to get hurt, and then I would stop. And I didn't get hurt doing that, but I definitely was playing with fire for a bit. But even over time, I found that was not the most efficient way to do it. But it was good that I did that though, because I now have a much better idea, at least feeling wise, of like how much more my body can handle or take before I'm probably going to get hurt.
So that's really cool. It's something that Mike and I talk a lot about. I've been doing Mike's training for a little over a year now, I think.
Yeah, just about a year.
And we talk a lot about, especially when we first got started, he was coming out of kind of a period of inconsistency and acclimating to new stuff in life with his daughter and everything. And we talked about a lot about momentum as a concept in training. And it sounds like that's kind of like what you're talking about, is week in, week out, like, I guess the mindset that you don't go broke taking a profit, but you don't want to squeeze the sponge too hard at any time. You don't want to burn the meat.
Exactly.
So, just take a little bit and then move forward, being a step ahead and leave some on the table for next time.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, definitely for building momentum. Because some people, for a while I tried to, go a bit too much, do a bit too much. I mean, it had its value because now I know better of like when I'm approaching that kind of, that sort of like level of fatigue, like and what injury prospect kind of looks like. But for the most optimal sort of like performance and for gains and everything, it's not necessary. At least I don't think.
Yeah, you can get away with taking everything that's there all the time until you can't, and you don't pick when you can't get away with it. It just happens.
Like with especially with conventional deadlift, man. Like I would like train that, just balls to the wall, so crazy, like crazy. I think Mike's seen me do like crazy air wraps like in the past and stuff like just insane stuff. And now that's like the lift out of all of my lifts that I like to train besides like bench, like the most. Well, no, not besides bench. I actually like to kind of push bench, but like conventional deadlift, like that's the one I usually train the most, like sub maximally. Minus yesterday. Yesterday I pushed it kind of hard, but I train that one like pretty sub maximally now, and don't like to go like super super heavy on it. And then when I need to perform on it, then I always can because I'm like relatively fresher and have good momentum built.
Yeah,
confidence. Yeah.
Yeah.
Coming back to where you're weighing at right now, just so you're competing right around 217, you said 216, 217 ish.
I was 217 at the meet. I was 221 yesterday. 221 yesterday.
Okay, so still some room to fill out the weight class, you'd say, right? Another 3-ish pounds, 3-4 pounds. What's the plan there? Making some changes nutritionally, making some changes training wise to increase that body weight. What's the plan?
Mm-hmm. So it's so I compete in the 231 weight class. So there's technically about 10.
Yeah, you all. I forgot. Yep.
So there's like a 10 to like 12 pound gap of weight.
Oh my God!
Gain.
Sky is the limit.
Yeah. And the last time I gained 20 pounds from 200 1851 to 217.
Stop! You already shamed us.
But 17 pounds made that much difference. So another 10, would probably still make a pretty significant difference. So I am like just slowly gaining. I don't like to, because I can actually pack on weight really fast, but I can lose it fast too. So I just try to essentially eat like within a particular calorie range. To stay like in a slight surplus and just slowly gain weight. And it's been working. I mean, over the last several months, I've been just slowly gaining weight along the way. And it's worked out pretty nicely and have stayed very lean. Because I don't want to, I don't think this would be an issue, but I don't want to not be lean. So that's another, just for like, well, one, just like appearance, two, functionality. Like I still want to be able to do a lot of stuff, Mike may have heard the old saying, shoot, move, and communicate. I want to be able to, still, of course, maintain and do all of those things. So yeah, I just focus on slowly gaining and I don't really rush it.
Mike tells me, now that we're on the topic of nutrition, on the topic of food, Mike tells me there's a certain story involving cocoa-infused lactose beverage, chocolate milk, that I need to hear about. So do you want to preface it with anything? Do you want to just jump in?
Yeah, I want to preface it also because I have the video, like, so we should see if we can just like clip it in or something.
We absolutely can. And we will.
Oh boy. Yeah, but I'll let Ashton take it. I mean, I guess I'll just set the stage. It's important to note that it's like 120 degrees inside Texas strength systems at pretty much all times of year. So we'll start there. And yeah, it's not really that much of a story. It's just like when I knew that Ashton was built different was when I witnessed him do this. So
yeah, I used to And this, I don't know why I stopped doing it. It worked so well for me, actually. Like
You're
I used
welcome.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, I used to like in between sets, I would chug like chocolate milk. I would get Promised Land chocolate milk. That's my favorite brand of chocolate milk.
Big stuff.
Good stuff. That is that's a tasty brand.
It's creamy, delicious. Like that was like my thing. And I would like sometimes I would like chug it between sets because like I had read like a series of studies then. I was like a teenager at this point, I think. Still, I like read a series of studies. Like, oh well, what athletes are drinking chocolate milk. Intra workout is helping them recover better for subsequent sets where they have to perform at higher intensities. I was like, okay, great. So, I drink chocolate milk and I'll be able to perform better. And I mean, it worked out well. But like Mike said, the main issue was that it was like 100+ degrees in the gym. So chocolate milk didn't always sit well in your stomach, like when you're drinking it, like when it's that hot. But I was still able to perform well. So I mean, I guess it was worth it.
Yeah, performed well. He was doing like pause squats with like 450 to 500 pounds for like sets of like 8 or something like that. It was absurd. It was not.
That was a high.
He was not casually doing arms or something like that. He was lifting weights at the time. It was absurd. So yeah, no, it's like the one thing that sticks out in my mind. I think it needs to be spread further and wider than it has been so far. We need to grow this legend. So
a quarter ton on your back with a belly full of chalky milk. So I do have a follow-up question. When you say chugging, and because Promised Land, as a fan of Promised Land as well, it comes in different sizes. Are we talking half gallon? Are we talking a 16-ouncer? The half gallon?
Half gallon or gallon? Yeah.
I want to say it was like a half gallon. It was a lot. It was not just an individual serving.
Yeah, no, it's not a small bottle that's like 8 or 6
for families. I believe.
Yeah.
Promised Land is not lightweight chocolate milk. It's like melted.
No, it is not.
No, it's like it's like thicker. Like the viscosity, like it just feels different.
These Fairlife fans don't know about it. They don't know.
Yeah,
This is not Paul's chocolate milk.
No.
Fairlife chocolate milk is like water compared to Promised Land.
Now I'm actually
gain weight too. That's a great way to do it. Is drink freaking
That was my next question. So when you say you gain slowly, small surplus, when you roughly track calories, how many calories is that for you? Just curious.
On average, like 4,000.
Okay. Okay.
Nice.
Like 4,000 ish.
Do you have a pretty active lifestyle as well, getting a lot of steps, moving around a lot throughout the day?
Not necessarily. I mean, not recently at least. I did for like the last 4 years before I started grad school. The last like 8-9 years before I started grad school. But I mean, since grad school, I still am active. Like I still do cardio. I still move around and stuff like that. But it's definitely not the same. And especially with COVID and everything else too, it's kind of changed a lot of that. But I still definitely do what I can. I'm thinking about doing I've done it like 3 times. Thinking about doing Baton Death March again. It's like this. Like 3 years in undergrad, I did this like 26-mile like marathon. Like it's a road, like it's a ruck march. So you have like a rucksack, and it's like 50 pounds or whatever. And I did that 3 times. I'm thinking about doing it again in the next year or 2, just because that's like one of those things in the Army. I don't know. Like I like rucking, and it's good for you.
How are you gonna stay hydrated during that?
That's a great question.
Are you bringing out the secret weapon?
Yeah, like I'll have extra. I might have a camelback full of Promised Land.
Oh, savage.
I might die if I do that.
So my last big, actual, serious, non-chocolate milk related question here for you. You talked military obligations. You talked grad student. You talked elite level USAPL lifter. What goes into balancing all of those for you from a time management standpoint? Because you hear people all the time talking about, my training takes up so much of my time, and they're working the Frosty machine 10 hours a week at Wendy's compared to what you're doing. So how do you make the time? What does your time management look like?
Yeah, I laughed when I read that. Yeah.
Appreciate
No.
that. He's contractually obligated to say that.
We're laughing.
Someone's holding up a sign in the back. Yeah. No. But no, that is a really good question. Because because life has just been so hectic, especially in this last year. Like it's not even funny. I'm actually thinking about buying a planner soon, which I've never done in school before. Never used a planner. I've never
10 out of
used
10.
anything like that. That's what I've been hearing. I've never needed one. Like I've always been able to manage everything in my head perfectly fine until this year. Like this year was like the breaking point. So, later this evening, I'm going to buy a planner to help. But a bit on the time management part though. So I am a firm believer that people who are truly usually invested in something like to a certain degree will definitely allocate time to it. And this time may look different for different people due to their lifestyles. But time is, at the end of the day, our most sort of precious commodity in this world. And once it's gone, you don't get it back. And, people usually functionally will try to spend a certain amount of time in proportion to how much they care about something. And for me, I found that I've always cared about training. I've always cared about fitness and being strong. So I, allocate some of my time to it. And even if that means, taking away time from other things or making sacrifices in other places, for me, it's something I care about. So it's something I do. With that said, I understand that some people have like busy lives and, they have a lot going on. I have a busy life, but there are ways, to manage your time. I think a planner is probably a great way to do it. I mean, I had like my own planner in my brain, like for the first year of grad school and college and everything else. But essentially, like, if you have to, get a plan, get something and break down your days hour by hour and, see what has to be done. See, once you fill sort of all that in, like what has to be done, then fill in the other things that matter to you that you want to get done with the time that you have left. And like you might be training at odd hours. Like there were times where I would train very, very late or very, very early, like after PT. Like I would sometimes train, or before PT even. Sometimes I would train sometimes. And I hate to say it, but like you just kind of really gotta want it. I know it's cliche, but like you gotta want it. And you have to be willing to dedicate and allocate some of your time to it. And it's not always like, and sometimes you are more busy than others, right? So sometimes it's okay, like to take away a little bit of time from that, like you don't always have to invest a crazy amount of time into training year round all the time to get better. Like, I think that's something that's also important, for us to remember. There are definitely time periods where I have a lot going on and I'm in the gym a little bit less and my head is a little bit more in books or, in computer screens these days. Totally has changed the graduate school experience to something that I did not want, but here we are. But, sometimes it's okay to pull away and sometimes it's okay to push a little more. And really, functionally, you just have to sort of, I think, break things down if necessary, hour by hour and see where you have time to train. And it's okay. Like if you need to split up sessions, like, whatever it takes, you can do that. There's no rule that says you can't do that and that you can't get better. So I think that's something really important for people to bear in mind if they're serious about not even just powerlifting, but just training or whatever it is that they want to allocate time to in their life.
Mike, I'm interested to see if you kind of had a similar experience, similar input after you kind of had your layoff from training or your inconsistencies in training, and then coming back, kid, deployment, all that comes with that.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, we could say that. I don't think I'm quite as good at managing everything quite yet. But I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for the idea of keeping it simple for one thing. Like Ashton's going to go and buy a planner, not like invest in some like crazy tool that's going to like organize everything for him. Like so far he's done well with like the couple of tools that he's had intrinsically. but now is going to get a little bit of external help. But like, not trying to like rely on some special system to do it for you, keeping it simple is, I think, huge. And then also being flexible and understanding that it's going to kind of ebb and flow a little bit. But that kind of ties into the momentum piece too, is, if there's a time where like, if like school is the primary thing you got to focus on, like you want to be building that momentum with your like studies and all that, not, peaking your bench press or something. You can work on both of these things at the same time. It's not going to like abandon you. But I think the idea of like things kind of ebbing and flowing and like having like an on time and an off time is huge. And, like I kind of alluded to, still very much kind of getting the handle of it. But I can definitely relate to a lot of what he's saying. And, I think for a lot of folks out there, biggest thing would just be just do it, just get it done. Do a little self-audit on your time, break it down hour by hour if you have to, and chunk things, but just getting it done, and don't wait for the perfect system that's going to get everything done. 80% solution, a lot better than a 0 solution. So no, that's music to my ears. I love it.
Absolutely. Especially if you're in the military.
Oh yeah.
in any way,
Yeah. For sure.
This seems like a good as time as any to plug our sponsor, Marshalls. Stop on down at Marshalls. Get yourself a planner. Use our discount code GPP10 at Marshalls. Just walk up to the counter, yell that at the person. If you get arrested, don't call us.
Can Jimmy
Don't
make
actually
a
try and
gifted
do that.
planner?
She most certainly can. She can make anything. The sweatshop at my house is advanced.
Hey, let's get one of those out to Ashton, so he doesn't have to go to the store tonight.
Done deal. Consider
that
it
would be so
done.
cool.
No, I think, Mike, you brought up a really good point. I think what I tell people is to live their lives with dimmer switches, to where you're dialing things up and down in your life. School, dialing that up, got to dial training down a little bit. None of these inputs are ever off. You're never turning off training. You're never turning off work or family or school or anything like that. It's just sliding up and down based on kind of the season of your life that you're in and what you really have time to emphasize. Sometimes you can run with the lights a little bit higher. Sometimes you want to avoid that. The electric bill is getting a little too high and you want to dial that stuff back. Yeah,
I think it's important also. You kind of have to audit what you're doing and why you're doing it. And it's really easy in for those of us that are around physical culture and physique and strength sports to do things just because it's what we've always done. And that's a recipe for burnout too, because you're devoting, 4 to 8 to 12, whatever hours a week of time to, and then all the energy that goes into it as well. And, I struggled with this recently. And it may be something you really just don't want to do anymore because you don't care about it. And so it's important to keep everything kind of focused in the big picture of why you're doing it, what you're doing, why you're doing it. And if your why kind of dries up, maybe it's time to find a new why or find a new thing. Because like I said, there's nothing worse than just grinding away, and you're spending time, which is, like you said, precious, and energy, which is almost as precious, and all of the opportunities that you may pass up, training a certain way or training for a certain thing just because, without having really done a good audit of your motivations for it. And then you look up and be like, I'm really tired of this. And I don't even want to do anything slightly different. I don't want to do it at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very true. All right. I think that just about wraps up all my questions for the day. Mike, Tom, anything you wanted to circle back to? Actually, let me just say, we really appreciate you coming on. Very valued guest. I enjoyed our conversation, enjoyed our laughs, the real ones and the fake ones that I paid you for.
So I do have one question for Ashton.
Yes.
And it's about Promised Land. I think we need to spend more time talking about Promised Land.
Yeah, bring it back.
I know you said that was then, that was in the old days, and one of the biggest things that's changed for you is emphasis more on health. And I'm wondering if you've tried to or thought about incorporating more fruits into your diet in the form of Promised Land peach milk. Because if you haven't, you really should consider trying the Promised Land peach milk because it's good.
It is.
This is a real thing.
Really good.
No, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. It can't be good.
It is like a melted Chick-fil-A peach milkshake.
Okay. You have my interest.
Sparked my curiosity. I shall try this.
Get you a sleeve of honey grams and a quart of Promised Land peach milk.
Ashton's next post, like, yeah, I'm competing at 120 now, guys. 105. I flew straight past that. These guys gave me terrible advice. They said they were professionals, invited me on their podcast, and they gave me diabetes.
Is it really bad advice?
I know.
Sounds delicious.
Really delicious advice. So I have a question for you, Ashton. So like, what's in case Ryan wasn't going to ask it, but what's next? Like, what are the next goals for you?
Yeah.
If you want to share them, if they're close to the vest, that's cool. But yeah, what's next for you, man?
So, if all things go well with COVID and everything else, I'm planning to compete again at TSS, actually, Texas Strength Systems, February 28th. That's my current plan. I'm looking to hopefully total more than I did last meet, but it will just depend on my ability. Maybe not quite 2,200 yet, but hopefully get in the mid 2,100 range. And then the meet after that, I'll probably try to take a crack at close to that if it goes well. Yeah. But ultimately, like my ultimate goals, like sort of lifelong goals, is I've wanted so one of my old lifetime goals actually was to break 800 on the squat. And now that I've done that, and I'm like, I still have so much more left. Now I've like readjusted that number to 900. And for deadlift, I know for deadlift, my lifetime goal has always been to hit 1,000 pounds. To do 1,000 pounds drug free, I want to do it conventional. Like I want to do it sumo too, but I want to do it conventional one day. Like that's still on the table for me. And yeah, I mean those are my primary goals. And then for bench press, I just want to keep getting better. I think as I get heavier and I get older, that it'll eventually sync up and get better. Hopefully.
Wow. Yeah, man. That's awesome. I believe in you. So
I mean, it's just totally, I mean, that's rare territory outside of drug tested lifting. But if you talk about doing that in the IPF, that's totally absurd. I mean,
oh yeah,
I love it.
That would be insane. I probably won't pull 1,000 in the meet. I'm not sure about that, but I definitely just want to do it. I just want to do it and be able to say that I've done it and weigh all the plates and everything. And yeah, that's like
absolutely forklift certified.
Yes.
Are you worried that if you do it in straps, the Instagram lifters of the world will never let you hear the end of it?
Oh no, I actually never use straps for deadlift.
Good man.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, like if I did it with straps, it just wouldn't be the same. I have to do it without.
Right on.
It's a personal thing.
Totals that will find fault,
Oh yeah, always.
I'm still sitting back here aghast that he said, now that I've squatted 800, I've readjusted my goals. And I was like, oh, he's going to say like 825 to 900. And that was one where if we don't end it there, I don't know where we ended. Ashton, where can people find you? Where can they reach out? Where can they DM you all of their encouragement and whatnot?
Oh, yeah, the best place for that is Instagram. That's the one I use the most, and people seem to enjoy the stuff that I put out. And people are always welcome to message me. Like I, can't always answer everything, but I mean, I certainly try to answer a lot of people. Especially when they offer, kind words of encouragement and tell me how much I motivate them and all that other stuff. It always means a whole lot to me, and it means a great deal. So I try to reply to as much of it as I can.
What's your handle over there, in case they haven't seen it?
Wreck-It Rouska.
Yeah, there it is. Mike, where can they find you, and what can they use you for?
Oh yeah, so they can find much less impressive lifting videos and occasional like nuanced topics at Mike Taylor DPT. Is the Instagram at. So if you got questions about training, rehab, etc., pain, any of that good stuff, you could ask me. I might not know the answer, but you could ask me.
And at the FBI, Tom, where can they find you?
Not on Twitter.
Anywhere but Twitter.
I'm on Instagram.
As always.
It's Tomas _Neil.
Don't do it. Don't do it. you're gonna lose your job if they find the Twitter.
God, no one finds my Twitter. Shit posts
As
up.
always, you can find me at _squatfather at Gifted Performance on Instagram. This has been another episode of the Gifted Performance Podcast. Thank you a million to Ashton for coming on. It has been an absolute ball. We will catch you guys on the next one. Stay gifted.